You survive. Whatever it takes. Never back down.
Alright, what is going on, everybody? My name is Flash, and today I have my review of the long-awaited Modern Warfare campaign. I replayed the original Modern Warfare campaigns this summer to hype myself up for the new Modern Warfare campaign, so I stayed up last night on launch and beat it at like 1 a.m., all in one sitting. So in this video, I will be discussing and reviewing the characters, the story, gameplay features, and comparing the campaign to the original trilogy. And yeah, just a quick disclaimer before I mention, go too far into any depth. This video does contain mild spoilers. There's nothing insane or too crazy, or if there's something that was really crazy, I'm gonna try not to go too in depth into it. But yeah, if you're wanting to go into this campaign with 100% no spoilers, not having any idea what's gonna happen, I strongly suggest you click off this video. But if you're okay with kind of having an idea on what happens, I think this should be pretty safe. So yeah, this campaign was absolutely incredible. I'd probably give it like an 8.5. So yeah, 8.5 out of 10. Really fun campaign. But with all that being said, let's start it off by looking at the story. Alright, so starting it off with the story, pretty obviously it takes place in a modern time. To be specific, October 24th, 2019 is when the story starts, which is actually release week of the game coming out. So the stuff that's happening in game is actually happening technically in as modern of a setting as you can get if you're playing this the week of release, which is really, really cool. Now, before I explain anything else, I think it's important to point out that Modern Warfare is a reboot. It is not a sequel. It is not a prequel. It is in no way connected to the Modern Warfare original trilogy. It has Captain Price and some other familiar faces in it, but the story is not connected in any way to the originals. There are some Easter eggs, but it takes place in a totally different universe. So the game starts off with a weapons raid. You're looking for chemical weapons in Russia, but unfortunately at the end of the mission, it goes bad. Almost everybody dies, and somebody who is unknown steals all the chemicals. So then, about 24 hours later, we see a massive terrorist attack in London with chemicals and suicide bombers and mass shootings, and it is hands down the no Russian of this game. There are a few other missions where you see some pretty disturbing, pretty shocking stuff, but this is hands down the most violent and offensive mission in this game. So then the story takes us over to a fictional country called Urkikistan, where we get to meet with a resistance leader named Farah, who fights alongside Captain Price, and two playable characters known as Alex, and I don't even know what the other guy's name is, to be honest, but he's kind of cool, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, you go around, you're walking through all these streets, and you learn that Urkikistan, it has been taken over by Russia. Russia is kind of killing everybody, forcing everybody to administer to their ways. However, Farah and her rebel fighters don't agree with this and team up with Captain Price to get rid of these Russian invaders because, they're taking over Urkikistan, and the SAS want to get the Russians out because they believe they're bolstering chemical weapons. So a lot of fighting ensues like normal. It's a Call of Duty game. Towards the end of your time in this country, you end up capturing their main leader, who's nicknamed the Wolf. So you capture him, it's all looking good until he gets away and you gotta recapture him, and then he kills himself. But the little twist here is the chemical weapons that were stolen at the beginning of the game were actually revealed to be stolen by one of your comrades, who then detonates them to scare off the Russians. But it's still kind of a twist, because you expected the bad guys to have the chemicals, and it turns out you actually have the chemicals. So kind of a twist, not as crazy as like Shepard's betrayal in MW2, but it's still very interesting. So after the Wolf is killed, you have to look up for the person who you thought was your teammate, but actually has been using chemical weapons to fight the people with chemical weapons, if that makes sense. So you end up tracking him down to Russia. You find him, you kill one of the other bad guys, kind of like an associate known as the Butcher. All goes well. We get to re-meet Nikolai from the original Modern Warfares. All is good. After, finding the guy who had the chemical weapons, you realize you're on the same team. Sure, he did use chemical weapons against the bad guys, and although he has chemical weapons and that's not cool, you kind of agree to make peace with him. So then, after that, you find out that the chemical weapons are being created in a factory in Georgia. So you have a big, insane siege on this Georgian factory, and it's really cool. You do a bunch of shooting, and you eventually blow up the factory and get rid of all of these chemical weapons. After that, the credits roll. You have a few cutscenes. Honestly, the cutscenes didn't do a whole lot for me. Basically, it was just a bunch of name dropping of a lot of characters from the original Modern Warfare series, such as Ghost, Soap, Zakayev, Macmillan, Al-Assad is seen but not named. General Shepard is mentioned. So really, the end, it's Captain Price trying to start Task Force 141, which we know from Modern Warfare 2. However, I don't think it's executed all that well. It can't really hype me up either because it's in a different universe, so it really has no merit, no weight, because it takes place in a different universe, so it's not really all that exciting. So that's the end of the story. Pretty interesting, I suppose. Some of the characters are really cool, and we'll talk about that in the next section, but all in all, really, I think the story was probably the weakest part of the game, but that being said, I still think the game is really, really cool. It benefits from a lot of other things that I'll be talking about in a little bit, but that's the main part of the story for the most part, without spoiling everything and getting too in-depth. Alright, so we see a vast majority of characters in this game. We play as about 5, but obviously there are a lot of other characters that we don't play as that are quite interesting. So starting it off, we have Sergeant Kyle Garrick, who is playable as a former British Army officer. He spends a lot of time with Captain Price. He's a pretty cool character. He has a lot of trouble morally with some of the situations he gets in, such as threatening to kill a man's family while interrogating him, and he really struggles and starts asking Captain Price, where do we draw the line? When is this illegal, and when do we actually have the right to do what we do in war to get answers? So he's a very interesting character. There isn't anything insane about him, but he is a pretty cool character. There are a lot of cutscenes in this game, so you actually do get to understand the personalities of the people you play as, which is quite a big change from, the original Modern Warfares, where we didn't even know what Soap sounded like or looked like until Modern Warfare 2, because we were too busy playing as him in the originals. But in this game, they do a very good job of showing us the personalities of the people we play as. Another big player that we play as for another good, probably other half of the mission, is Alex. He is the one that's over in Urkistan, fighting with the rebel fighters. He's very motivated to their cause. He went in there not really knowing much, but discovers that he actually sides very well with the cause, and teams up very heavily with these rebel fighters. He's a pretty interesting character as well. It's interesting to see how he's been in a lot of battles, but he's never agreed so strongly with a battle like the one in Urkistan. There's an unnamed CIA officer we play as in one mission, not all that cool. And then probably the biggest character in this game, possibly even bigger than Captain Price, is a female named Farah, who is the leader of the rebel coalition in Urkistan against the Russians. And she is a very, very, very complex, cool character. We play as her in a couple of flashback missions. We see her as a little kid when the Russians come in for the very first time, kill her family, but she and her brother manage to escape. Pretty cool. And then we get to see her as an adult who has grown up with this strong distaste against the Russians who have taken away her freedom. So very, very cool. Like I said, she's probably the coolest character in the game, I would say, maybe even cooler than Captain Price. She absolutely despises chemical weapons, so when her brother uses chemical weapons against the enemies, she basically disowns him, because that is how strongly she hates these chemical weapons that have taken away her freedom. So she's quite interesting. We play a couple missions as her, but we mostly fight alongside her. She is totally kick-ass. A really, really cool character. She's kick-ass. She's a female, and I think this is one of the first times in Modern Warfare where we've actually had a female character this big, but it isn't shoved in your face like a weird look how equal we are in all this. She's just an awesome freaking character. And then probably the last major character that I'll mention would be Captain Price. they did a really good job on casting Captain Price. The voice sounds very similar. He doesn't add an insane amount to the story, in my opinion. He's just kind of there because he's Captain Price and he's kind of a selling point of the game. But he does have a few awesome kills, takedowns, a few kick-ass lines. You know, Captain Price has always been that hardcore badass that everybody just can't seem to hate. Like, everyone just loves him, man. So it's Captain Price, pretty badass. That's most of the characters. A couple side supporting characters would be Farrah's brother, who is sided with the rebels but uses more terrorist and aggressive means to fight these terrorists. And then we also have a couple bad guys. We have the Wolf, who is responsible for a lot of chemical weapons in Urkikstan. And then, of course, we have the bad Russian guy, because every Modern Warfare game has to have a bad Russian. He's kind of cool too. There isn't really a whole lot about him. He likes his chemical weapons as well, but honestly, he isn't as insanely developed as he could have been. Keep in mind too, I've just played through this campaign once, and I might not have all the answers. Maybe his character might be more fleshed out if I played it a little slower and maybe played it twice. But yeah, that's pretty much all of the criminals, really. There's a couple, smaller guys, but that's most of the cast. Alright, so the real selling point for Modern Warfare campaign has got to be the gameplay. Modern Warfare has a brand new engine, separate from every other Call of Duty, and it really shows. With the gun skill, you can, reload while you're in your sight and all sorts of cool stuff. And so yeah, first of all, the game just feels good. But on top of that, Modern Warfare gameplay is just incredible. Every single mission has something unique about it, whether you're calling in airstrikes. There's one mission where you have to go around and pick at a car, get a gas cylinder, and screw it around your gun to use as a makeshift silencer. There's parts of the campaign where you're hiding from soldiers by pretending to be dead bodies. There's a part where you have to climb up ladders, and you have to be shooting as you're climbing the ladder, which is, again, nothing we've ever seen in COD. Usually you can't shoot as you climb. There's another part where a bomb is about to go off, and you have to defuse the bomb by cutting certain wires at a certain time, which is really intense. What else have we got? There's so much. There is part of the mission where you have to walk through a Russian-occupied village, so you have to have your weapon concealed. So there are some parts where you'll have to do some shooting, but there's some parts where you have to have your weapon concealed, because if the Russians see that you have a weapon on you, they'll kill you instantly. So it's, some calls like, do I want to shoot? Do I not want to shoot? There's night vision parts. There's some parts of the campaign where you don't know if a female is going to be friendly or not. Like, you think she's friendly, and then or not like friendly, but you're clearing a house, you kill her husband, and it looks like she's going to comply with you, and then she picks up a gun, so you got to kill her. So there's all sorts of crazy stuff like that. There is a scene where you're in a hospital, and there's a patient who looks like he's sick until he whips out a gun and starts shooting at you. So it's just non-stop crazy gameplay that in my opinion really sells this game. The story is alright in my opinion, not as good as the originals, but this gameplay, man, like every single mission has something new, which meant I could play this game for 5.5 hours. I played it all in one sitting, and I wasn't even finding myself getting bored of the campaign. I mean, I've played Modern Warfare 1 and Modern Warfare 3 in one sitting, and towards the end it's getting really boring. You're just mindlessly shooting. But in this game, it's not mindless shooting. There's all sorts of new gameplay features in every single level that really keeps you hanging on. There's stuff, missions again, where you want to keep stealth by staying in the dark, so you got to shoot up lights to blind everybody. So yeah, conceal yourself in the dark. So yeah, the gameplay, 100% the best part of the campaign. Really sells this game away from any other Call of Duty I've ever played. Really replayable, really, really awesome. So yeah, the gameplay, 10 out of 10. Alright, so perhaps the most interesting question that this game raises is, how does this campaign live up to its original trilogy? And honestly, I gotta say it does an incredible job, because I can't even really give you a direct answer on which one's better. They both have their strengths and their weaknesses, but probably the biggest advantage that the original trilogies have on this campaign is nostalgia. Everybody remembers the first time they played all gillied up, or shot up an airport, or the first time General Shepard betrayed them. And unfortunately, this campaign, since it's new, just doesn't have that nostalgia around it. But that being said, there are a lot of wild moments in this campaign, and give it 3, 5, 10 years, I think there'll be a lot of memorable parts in this campaign as well. Now, I think the biggest differences in this campaign and the original 3 is just how different the mood is. The originals were almost like a Hollywood action movie, maybe not quite as realistic as this one, and although it was dark at sometimes, it was mainly just a lot of fun, like you're saving the White House and you're doing massive jumps between mountains on snowmobiles, whereas this game, it hits a lot closer to home. It's a lot more realistic. It takes place in a modern time, and it's almost scary how modern and real it feels. So it kind of depends what type of story you like more. Personally, I really liked the original trilogy story more than this one. This had a good story, but I don't know, there's just something about the originals that I absolutely loved. I liked all of the characters in that a little more. That being said, this did have very good characters, just not quite my favorites, I guess. I'm not even really sure how I'm able to back this up. They're realistic, they have morals, they're dynamic, but the originals, there's just something about clearing a room with Yuri, Captain Price, and Soap that I just didn't get in this game. I didn't get quite as hyped about the characters, even though they are very, very strong characters. And then the thing that I would probably say puts the new game over the old game is obviously, it's newer with the new engine, but even forgetting about that, just all the different types of gameplay in this game. Like, the original Call of Duty Modern Warfares did have, the odd, sniper mission or AC-130 mission, but this game knocked it out of the park. I said it already in the gameplay section. This game, it is incredible. There is, like I said, bomb defusal steps. There is a scene where you are getting waterboarded and you have to try to move your head so you can breathe and survive. And the attention to detail is just insane. For instance, there's this one mission where you break out of prison and you're really weak and malnourished. Obviously, you've been in prison for a very long time. So once you get your gun in that mission, it takes you longer to reload in that mission than it does in the other missions where you're playing as this highly trained soldier. So just little attentions to detail like that are absolutely incredible, and I think the gameplay features in this game are superior to the originals, and not just because of the time that's passed, but just the amount of thought they've put into each mission. Like, how can we make this one unique? How can we make this more than just shooting people? So honestly, I gotta give it a tie. It really depends. If you want a dark, gritty, realistic story, you'll probably like this story more. If you like the crazy, high action, kind of unrealistic, but just really epic stories from the original, you'll probably like that one. Gameplay wise, I would say this one's better, but if you just want to go shoot people, then you'll probably like the originals. But if you like climbing up ladders with one hand as you're shooting, and controlling surveillance cameras to tell people in a war-torn embassy how they can survive, this is 100% the game for you. So honestly, I don't know how I can rate this out of a number. I'd probably give it like an 8.5 out of 10. Like, the gameplay is a 10. The story I wish would be a little more fleshed out, and I was kind of confused a little bit by the ending. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. That they just name dropped all these characters, and it's in a different universe, so didn't really have any weight to it. But it is a fantastic game. I strongly suggest that if you guys were fans of the original Modern Warfare games, or still play Call of Duty right now in the present, play this freaking campaign, guys. It is absolutely incredible. So yeah, that's kind of all I have to say. If this review helped make up your mind if you wanted to play it or not, or if you learned anything cool, drop a like and tell me what your thoughts on the campaign are, or if you're gonna play it. That's all I gotta say. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys all in the next one.